Yo, Alan Rath here. Hey, so gonna go into a new little series I'm gonna do. So it's about Kiwis living in Australia, which is me and my family, and a bunch of friends of mine. We all have migrated from Australia. I don't know, kind of. I've been here since January last year. So what's the date today? Today is July the 1st, 2026. And I'm feeling like super conscious. There's so many people around because July 1st, look how epic the weather is. Kind of makes you think why you would want to stay in a really rainy, cold place during July and August and September and sometimes October and even into December and even leading up to that, like May. My birthday's in May. I always kind of feel like my birthday, it's at the end of May. We'll give New Zealand a little bit of a chance here. My birthday's at the end of May. And yeah, felt like it would always rain. It would be Queen's birthday weekend around about my birthday. So I'd get like a long weekend, which was pretty good. Now it's a King's birthday weekend. And guess what? In Australia, King's birthday weekend isn't even the same as the King's birthday weekend in New Zealand. I mean, that's kind of weird as well, right? But I'm down on Tugun Beach. So right down there you can see, you probably can't even see, it's so far away. But anyway, that is Surfers Paradise down there. And you can kind of just see the headland, the Burleigh Heads, and you can see the headland at Elephant Rock there, and behind there is Currumbin Alley, which is like an epic surf spot. The alley, I'd never known about it. I'd only ever heard of, I've surfed majority of my life and been followed professional surfing, and I knew about Burleigh, I knew about the Superbank, all the famous spots like Snapper, Green Mount Kira, Rainbow Bay. I've never heard of the alley, and I found out about it 10 years ago when we first moved here to visit my brother-in-law who was living here in Palm Beach. Palm Beach, look at that. So I thought I'd go through like my story and my family's story about how we landed here in Australia. It's, if I can be completely honest and vulnerable, always felt like I had to hide the whole, like all the details of it, because it made me embarrassed about who I was as a person. I really, like most of my life wanted to move to Australia. I did a holiday to Noosa when I was 14. Went to Rangitoto College in Auckland. So I am a Kiwi through and through. Born in Browns Bay. Lived most of my life in Browns Bay. I've got Scottish parents that moved to Browns Bay in, I think it was 1978. And them moving from Scotland to Auckland was like moving to paradise. It was incredibly tropical, super beautiful place to move to for them. And I never want to, and while I'm talking about it, knock Auckland or New Zealand or where I'm from, because I love those places. I still got friends and family there, and still got so many positive memories there. And all my schooling life was really epic and positive. But it comes down to what's in your heart a lot of the time as well. And I think a lot of people that will want to watch these videos, they want to look at the stats, right? They want to know, is petrol cheaper here? Yes. Is petrol more expensive in New Zealand? Yes. And other things like, is food cheaper or more expensive here? Housing? Do you get paid more in a job? And I feel like all those things are really good, but what's the point of doing those things and saving yourself, say, 20 grand a year, or earning an extra 20 grand a year to be unhappy, all right? So you got to follow, I don't want to say follow your heart, but you got to make gut decisions as well, because what I'm going to tell you is I may as well just walk down this beach. I'm actually walking in the water. Look at this. It's so nice. So I feel like you got to make a bunch of gut decisions for yourself. And I have tried to move to Australia numerous times. I actually put my family on a plane to move here 3 times. So the first time, I'll go back to that living in, living in Browns Bay, holidaying to the Gold Coast and Noosa in 1997. It was the end of 97. I just bought my first surfboard. I bought a Primal, for anyone that knows Primal surfboards. Bought a Primal. So I went and, why don't I head up here? I'm gonna go and sit on the bank. So my first experience was this amazing experience because we traveled in November. It was like the end of the year. I was at a new school, at a new college, making a bunch of new friends and stuff. And I was feeling like pretty positive and good about that year. And we finished it off by doing a family holiday to meet my auntie and uncle. They had a timeshare in Noosa on top of the hill. So we flew into Brisbane and I went with my mum and dad. I'm an only child, got no brothers and sisters. And have such a good family, super tight with my mum and dad. So we got off that plane. Look, I remember getting off the plane in Brisbane Airport and it feeling like, it felt so like tropical, and it just felt like, I'm just gonna, give me a sec. Just gonna put this tripod here. There you go, hopefully you can see me all right. So, I got off the plane in Brisbane. I remember getting out of the airport, and it wasn't that it was warm, it was that I could feel the humidity, and it felt better than what I'd just left. But summer in Auckland can be pretty epic. Even from November and December, you can actually get some really good days that you feel like summer's here and you're getting sunburn and stuff. But this was different. This had a smell about it. And I was like, couldn't quite identify it as a kid, but I identified it, I don't know, probably, I remember the last time I flew into Brisbane Airport, or the first time I flew into Brisbane Airport after that. It would have been as a newly married, around about 2008, 2009. Me and my wife went on a trip to visit her parents who are living in Brisbane. And I remember getting off, going through that same airport and it looking the same, but it was like, it smelt the same and the atmosphere felt very like similar. And that was like a real key defining moment for me as like a 14-year-old that I remember like going to Noosa, staying up on the hill, having epic weather. It was the week that, I'd had a surfboard and I started surfing in Auckland, and a surfing career in Auckland's pretty difficult if you don't have a car and if you are a 14-year-old that can't even have a license, and if you have to basically walk or catch buses everywhere. So I didn't really know how to surf yet. I was just getting into it, but it was the whole culture and the lifestyle of it. So in that week in Noosa, I started body surfing, just no fins, just like body bashing. And that to me was like, I found it like the most fun thing. My parents like sitting on the beach, but I remember just like going for wave after wave after wave. And it was like pumping clean, just shore break, closeouts, little barrels. And I just felt like, if I could do that for the rest of my life, I would have just been so happy. Fast forward like, man, what was I, 14? Fast forward like kind of, I don't know, till I was about 18. I came to the Gold Coast. Oh, here's a plane. And these planes go like straight overhead because the airport's right there. Down on Tugun Beach, the airport's like across the road. I'm scared that it's killing my audio because it's so loud. But I would have gone back to the Gold Coast when I was 18. I remember going to the Palm Beach Surf Club for dinner and watching a lightning storm. Another positive experience. I'd lived in Australia as a kid, only for a year in Perth. I was ages 5 to 6. It would have been 1988 to 1989, I think it was. That was a really positive experience. And I remember a lot about that, going to school there and the weather and going for walks with my dog, going, like the local parks, local shops and what all that was like, what it was like having friends. But it was when I got married to my wife, Taz, that we both had this constant discussion about how we wanted to move to Australia. Her mum and dad had actually gone the year we got married in 2008. part of us really wanted to follow them, but the other part of it was we had just got married. We had a whole bunch of friends. We were like pretty settled. We were pretty good. We were renting like a 2-bedroom house that we had our first 2 kids in for $300 a week. And that we had good jobs. I had a company car, had a company phone. I had like a great salary at the time, plus a clothing allowance because I was working for a fashion label, plus the ability to buy cheap, high-end, clothes that we wanted to wear as a couple. And I remember having a discussion with my wife's dad, and they were there in Brisbane, and he was trying to encourage us that wouldn't you just be able to replace what you're doing in New Zealand and do it in Australia better. And that was his experience after having been there for a couple of years. I remember at the time in like trying to not talk my way out of it, but say no nicely. But it had always been a dream and a desire for me to want to move to Australia. And it wasn't just that I, like someone had done something in my formative years to be like, Australia is the coolest place ever. No one had done that. It was just my own positive experiences had geared me towards, okay, what would be the next move in life to fulfill a goal and what I feel is like success. And for me, that was moving to Australia. So we would holiday there every year to visit my wife's parents. We'd stay for 3 to 4 weeks. We'd stay in the Central Coast. We stayed in Brisbane. We would do trips up to the Sunshine Coast. We'd do trips from the Central Coast and fly up to stay in Palm Beach with my brother-in-law. We fell in love with Palm Beach. That was around 2012, I think it was. And then, that was before that. Okay, that was about 2015. But before that, we used to do the trips to the Central Coast. And in 2013, we made this decision. I had gone full-time freelance. I was working for myself as a graphic designer, and I was trying to carve out a career as either an illustrator, that was number one, or a photographer. And I was really struggling. And I knew that if I went to somewhere like Sydney, I had done the research that I had better opportunities. So I got taken on by an agent, an illustration agent. They opened an office in Sydney. And so I thought, man, I may as well just do it. So we decided to pack everything up at the end of 2013. Made the decision at the end of 2013. Didn't really tell anyone because we were a bit on the fence about it. We had 2 little kids. Mexi at the time was 3. Roman at the time was just newborn. 6 months old or something. Maybe even younger. I was freelancing all through that summer, got a good 3 months worth of work, and in that time we made the decision to go. So we packed up, and by April, and I'm going to put this date out there, April the 15th was the day we flew out of Auckland, and we flew into Sydney, and then went and stayed with my wife's parents on the Central Coast. It was really great because we had a base, we had a place to stay, and having a place to stay that is super helpful because you don't have the crazy overheads. And if you don't have a job, which we didn't have jobs, because I was struggling to find a job to go over with, we were able to make it work. So I got a whole bunch of freelance work. I'd catch a train for an hour and a quarter each day when I would get freelance work from the Central Coast. It's like around about Gosford, all the way down to Sydney. That would take an eternity because there's 15 minutes getting there, 15 minutes getting home. So it's like an hour 45, door to door, twice a day. On the train though, it was comfy enough to get the laptop out and my sketchbook out and work on my illustration career and actually do projects and do work. So I was very, and I get a lot done. So 8 hours working there, and then plus a half an hour lunch break, plus 15 minutes either side walking, plus the other hour and a quarter, 2.5 hours on the train. I was like gone for like 11 hours, and that whole time I was just working on myself, working on what I did, and working on my craft, which actually ended up being a really profitable thing for me going forward because I had the time, the downtime to work myself out. In between that, we moved out to a beach called Avoca Beach, took like a holiday rental for 3 months walking distance to the beach, and I took on enough projects that I didn't have to go into Sydney to work anymore. I could work from this little beach house we were at. And that would be one of the most fondest years of my whole life. But in that time, I was just struggling with like not getting offered a job and anything solid that I could make a decision to keep my family there and stay. And I actually got offered a job back in New Zealand as a graphic designer, which was a good opportunity to go back and start a new job. The week before we left Australia, I got offered a job in Mona Vale in Sydney working for a branding agency. I'd been doing a bunch of advertising work, which I wasn't really enjoying, and I wanted a job in brand, and I got offered this job. And out of my integrity to say, to basically not burn the New Zealand company, I went back for the New Zealand job, even though I had this gut feeling to stay and pursue this, my dream to be in Australia. So I always regretted that. We went back to New Zealand, we took a rental, we're paying pretty cheap rent still, but we were just one parent working, and by the time we got back to New Zealand, it was into 2014, into 2015, and the property market had just boomed, and state houses that were local to where we were renting that were $380,000 to purchase for a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom home had escalated to well over $1 million, and we were completely cut out of the market. And I thought, crap, I'm never gonna own a house. So it was pretty, it was pretty sobering, to be honest. And that time I'd come back, I actually had really I just made a bed of regret and got into it, and I couldn't get out. And it just wreaked absolute havoc in my thought life and how I felt about myself as a person, my outlook. I actually just felt like a failure. I wasn't having many wins in New Zealand, and I felt like, man, I should have just stayed. A couple of years passed. I actually managed to get through that. It probably took me 2 to 3 years. And then all of a sudden I was better than ever, stronger than ever, and smashing goals. And my own career as an illustrator, which I was convinced was going to take off after a year of leaving university in 2006 or 2006. I was convinced I would be super successful within the first year. It took me to 2018, probably 2018 before I actually started getting, so it took 10 whole years. And looking at that, I was completely delusional. And I was just young, I was in my 20s, early 30s, dumbass, that's the thing. You gotta wait till you get to your 40s and you realize what all those dumb decisions were that made you really tough and really strong and gave you an ability to not make as many mistakes, but probably make a lot of wiser decisions. Okay, roll around, we get to 2020. You all know what happened then. Although 2020 in Auckland for me was actually a really great year for business. I turned over the most I turned over in a year ever. But after end of financial year would be done at the end of March, going into April. And the second half of the year became going into 2021 was the worst. The absolute worst for me. And we were stuck at home. A lot of jobs I had were put on hold completely. But my wife's parents, who had just moved to the Gold Coast after being 2 years in a caravan, tripping around Australia, visiting the grandkids, were looking to buy a place. And they bought a place in the Talabudra Valley. And I had never heard of that place. We had been holidaying in Palm Beach for going on 5 or 6 years, and were dead set that if we ever moved to Australia, we would move there. They came to stay with us in the middle of 2020. All the borders in New Zealand were open, and it was a totally fine place to come in. If you're a Kiwi, to come back to. Lots of Kiwis were coming back. But as soon as they got there, they planned to come for 3 months. They got stuck with lockdowns and they were stuck for 7 months. They were stuck all the way up until mid-December. It was near impossible to get out of New Zealand, and they found a way. They managed to talk to someone who was an absolute legend and helped them get out. Anyway, we were struggling really bad, and my wife had lost her contract, didn't renew, or lost her job over the mandates as a school teacher. I was really, really struggling for work. All of my freelance clients had pulled out on me. I had a massive job going. They paid a deposit, they pulled out on me. I had one client that stuck with me, and I was getting 20 hours a week from them because they were so good to me. I was giving it to them at a reduced rate from what I was charging all my ad clients, and because they were a non-for-profit, and it was really, really painful, like the not being able to afford. Our kids hadn't been in school for 6 months, and we were like, stuff it, man. What's the point of this? So we talked to that same person at the airport. They left an answer, like a message on their answer phone. They called us back, and on the spot said to us at the start of December, the first weekend of December, we were just renting in a place, and we had to give 3 weeks notice. They said the last plane out of New Zealand is going to Brisbane, and it is leaving on the 31st of December, and there are no flights after that. Do you want to basically take a flight in between that, or do you want to take that flight and basically on the spot, it's going to cost this much money, like $2,000 or something, do you want to do it? And we were just like, well, we've made the decision, if we can get out and go do something interesting and go stay with my wife's parents, let's do it. So we said, yeah. In 3 weeks, we packed up our whole house, got rid of heaps of stuff, felt real good, put it into storage. Super difficult, super emotional in that last week. And then we jumped on planes, went through totally empty airports and went to Brisbane. And that was like an epic experience, because we were able to leave somewhere that I felt was like very oppressed, and I had a bad experience for the prior 6 to 7 months. I got to go somewhere where the border was shut between, the border's just down there, right there, that's Coolangatta down there, and where those hills are and stuff, that's where the border is. And wow, they say that you couldn't go through the border, but who knows? I heard people were, but you actually couldn't really. So it was great to come here and be in Queensland, just be in a place where, that kind of C word wasn't really a thing, So I was really grateful to get out because of what was happening in the world, economy-wise, and you couldn't even get a tyre changed. I got a flat tyre, couldn't even get a tyre changed. Someone told me, there was like February, end of January, February, they said, can you book in for April? I was used to just like rocking up and just getting my tyre changed. And they'd be like, I'll come back in 40 minutes to an hour or something. It was really difficult here, and we decided if it's going to work, it's going to work. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Let's just decide to just go with it. New Zealand locked its borders. We couldn't get back over to New Zealand anyway if we tried. So we were forced just to stay and just play out, whatever was going to happen was going to happen. I actually got offered a job, and due to like a moral conflict with one of the brands the company had, I turned the job down. And it was just kind of frustrating. But I had enough of my own work and client work, and I was already doing okay enough to like support my family, and we were really grateful to be living with family. And another job came up for me. Oh no, not for me, but for my wife as well. To have a bit of a career change for me and for my wife as well. And it was another teaching job back at the old school she worked out. Anyway, long story short, we accepted the jobs because that's what we felt like, that was the gut decision we decided to make. Went back to Auckland, got a rental pretty easily because it was from someone who knew us. They were one of our old neighbours, and they were moving to Australia. We it was, so we just like slotted back into our old lives after like being gone for like 6 months or something. But the whole regret thing came up again because for me, I felt like the job side of things wasn't really working out, and it didn't work out. And I was forced back into working for myself, which was a really hard pill to swallow because I was struggling to afford it. Anyway, I ended up getting the work. It was okay. And I was in a bit of a change of like headspace in my career. I could see a bit of writing on the wall with AI coming and how that would affect my work. And I could really feel it myself that after 10, 15 years just working solely as a creative, I was starting to get really just scratching for something new, something a bit more people focused, less introverted, because I'm not an introvert at all, which is I found weird. And I just wasn't getting the big projects where I get out and paint murals and meet people and travel and do graphic recording and all that stuff that I actually really thrived on. I just found myself chained to a desk and stuck with my own thoughts. Remember, stuck in the bed of, what do you call it? The bed I made of regret that I couldn't get out of. But couple of years passed and look, life was just normal as ever. And it was like, kind of like we'd never gone. The regret was there that we'd gone twice and decided to come back again. I felt that bit of like, anytime anyone asked me, I just felt like I felt like an idiot trying to explain it. And I felt like I had to try and tailor it not to get asked other questions, maybe kind of shut people down. 2 are kind of like, I had this sense of failure on the inside, like, oh, why couldn't I just make that work? That was my dream. And 3, what would 3 be? It was like coming to grips with the fact that my dream of moving to Australia was probably never going to happen. And I would still always write down my goals and my dreams. And over and over and over, I'd write it down. I keep coming back to the same thing. I wanted to move to the Gold Coast. There was a certain school I wanted to send my kids to. There was a certain school I wanted my wife to get a job at. There was certain things I wanted to do. I would just keep writing them down. It was like repetitive meditation, and I wasn't forcing it. It was just like, hey, this is in my heart. This is what I want to do. I just kept, pursuing that dream. Ends up at the end of, 2026 now? So July 2026. I've been here since January 2025 and back in March, April, May. Anyway, the start of the year in 2024, my wife had said, hey, look, if our landlord decides that she's going to sell the house, which she said she wouldn't, we'll take that as here comes another one of those planes. Hopefully there's not too many Kiwis leaving Australia, looking at us down on the beach here in total regret. Sorry, Kiwis. Maybe it's some Australians wanting to go experience some New Zealand weather. I mean, New Zealand is super beautiful, let's be honest. Like my dad said to me, never travel the world until you've traveled your own country. And I was lucky enough to have a sales job in New Zealand where I traveled the country over and over and over and over, and I had all my spots I go to. So, yeah, I feel like that guy's gone. He's not messing with my audio now. Trying to think about where I got to. Man, I can't even remember. I'm going to have to make this up because I'm going to like backtrack. And it's so beautiful down here, eh? There's so much. Look at all these people. It's school holidays here. There's people everywhere, just like down to the beach, as hot as. I feel like with my my ugly Canterbury represent New Zealand rugby jersey on, I'm feeling pretty warm. It is. It's really hot for July. It must be like 22 degrees or something. It's absolutely epic. And I feel like I'm getting a bit of a tan here without getting burnt, which is good. That's the other thing in Australia. I feel like I'm able to all year long maintain a tan, even on my back. In New Zealand I'd be like pasty white this time of year. My mum would always comment on it that I looked like I needed to go get a tan. That I had mates visiting in New Zealand, from New Zealand, for the last week, and we surfed every day in sunny weather, and I didn't put sunblock on once. And that's like 3-hour sessions in the water with the sun reflecting off into my face. Right, so let's go back. I'll try and make up where I was. So I just, there was the start of the year. My wife said, if the landlord decides to sell, because it was a big goal of us to buy our own house. And we're struggling to do that in Auckland. She said, why don't we, take that as a sign that we're going to move to Australia. I went about, not very serious about that, but there was something that happened in July of 2024, exactly a year ago, where I couldn't deny that I had a moment that was like, we need to move to Australia. I actually had this real, epic moment. And the crazy thing was, during that epic moment, I quickly left, went and talked to my wife, Taz. I said, you're not going to believe this. I feel like I got this sign that we need to move to Australia. And she said, you're not going to believe this. But just now I got a text from the landlord saying she's selling the house. So we were like, okay. I went about trying to find a job, couldn't get a job here. Really struggling as a graphic designer and an art director, because a lot of our work we do is within Australia's in Melbourne and Sydney for employed jobs. I couldn't find a remote one because everyone was starting to call everyone back to work in the office instead of working at home, keeping everyone accountable, And then the other thing is Brisbane and Gold Coast don't have as much industry. And I'd been offered a job the year prior to move to Brisbane, and it just didn't feel right. The guy that offered me the job, I just wasn't 100% on the job. Anyway, we went about trying to get me a job here so we could move over, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. And my wife said, hey, maybe I'll just apply for a couple of jobs. She ended up getting 3 teaching job offers, and the 2 she got, one pushed really hard for her. The other one was going to be an online school, which was quite cool, but it wasn't a permanent job. And then the other one finally came in the final hour, and it was, remember I said I would write down where I wanted my kids to go to school and where I wanted my wife to work? It was at that school. And it just was too divine, worked out too perfect that we just had to do it. So again, wheels in motion, packed everything up, put a bunch of sentimentals into storage. Thanks National Mini Storage for looking after my stuff so well. We moved back here, I'm pretty sure it was like the 8th of January 2025. And it couldn't have, in my eyes, it was difficult, it was hard, but the difficult and the hard things were emotional because we brought 3 kids. One kid was 14 at the time, going on 15. One kid was 11, going on 12, and the other one was 6, going on 7. And to take them all away from their friends that they'd had since they were 4 years old was a really difficult thing. And still, we're a year and a half in, we have moments where it is still difficult because they're still friends with those kids. They get to play online games with them. And but our kids have completely thrived since being here. They've flourished. We managed to succeed at something I thought we would never get to do, and that was buy a house. My wife is still in the same teaching job, and the job is great. It's hard, but it's amazing. And I never thought, I wanted to go back to having a job, but I actually have taken a bit of a career change, and I still work as a creative and still work as a creative in my role, but I've taken a job as a marketing manager, which I think is a really great kind of change of lifestyle, change of pace, do a lot more admin, which I suck at, but I'm getting better at it. And we are really thriving here as a family because we were able to buy our first house. And that really that was in September of 2025. And that just kind of broke down a whole bunch of walls for me because although the house is expensive and it's hard to pay for it and the interest rates have gone up twice since being here, I can't help but feel like I'm living the life I'm supposed to live. And I'm incredibly grateful that I get to succeed my career. My part-time career has been a middle-aged surfer, and I get to surf the waves. I've dreamed of surfing my whole life, and I'm engaged in the community. I'm part of a surf club. My kids are part of a surf club. We're part of a really great church. We are part of two really great schools, because I work for a school as well. And we know so many people, and I'm absolutely thriving meeting new people and networking, and having what I believe is like a fresh start in life. So that's my story. And your story will end up being completely different. But it took me 10 years from 2023, 12 years, 11 years-ish, 10 to 12 years, let's say, from knowing in my heart that we're going to try and make this work and move to Australia. And in that time, property rates have boomed, all these things I could have regret and feel like I missed out on, like buying a cheap house close to the beach. But man, it doesn't matter, because I feel like when you really follow your dreams like this and stick consistently to a dream for over 10 years, that you can't help but succeed, because it's something that you'll want to hang on to, and you'll treat it as precious, and you'll look after it. So hope you enjoyed my story, and hope you have an epic day. Look at this, look at that. Midweek, Wednesday, people are coming in from having a surf. People are down on the beach, walking with their girlfriend. People down there with their cool cabana. Did I just say that like an Australian? Cool cabana? Cool cabana? Who knows? Anyway, hope you have a good day.